The galaxy was dying. Everyone knew it, but no one wanted to say it out loud. Fleet Admiral Yuna stood on the bridge of her warship and watched another planet burn. The Drath swarm had arrived 3 days ago. Now there was nothing left but fire and screaming. Her soldiers had tried to save the people there. They had failed. Again. Yuna was old for her kind. The Velen people looked like tall insects with 4 arms and eyes that glowed soft blue. She had fought in wars for 60 years. She had won many battles. But this enemy was different. The Drath were not soldiers. They were hungry monsters that ate everything in their path. They did not want land or power. They wanted only to consume. "Admiral," said her officer, "the colony is lost. We must retreat." Yuna closed her eyes. Another 1,000,000 lives gone. Another world turned to ash. Pull back all ships. Set course for the capital. Our fleet turned and ran. There was no shame in it anymore. Running was all they could do. Far away, on a small refugee ship called Sanctuary's Hope, a young historian named Duri could not sleep. She was Mori, a species that looked like humans, but with pale blue skin and gills on their necks. Her people could breathe underwater and in air. Right now, she wished she could breathe easier. The fear in the ship was so thick it felt like drowning. Duri spent her nights reading old books that most people had forgotten. Tonight she read about humans. The texts were ancient, written 12,000 years ago. They spoke of a species that walked on 2 legs, had soft skin, and lived short lives. But in those short lives, they burned brighter than stars. The old writers called humans impossible. They adapted to any world. They never stopped fighting. They loved and hated with equal fire. And they had been part of the Galactic Coalition once. Long ago. Then they disappeared. Some books said humans died from a great plague. Others said they destroyed themselves in civil war. But Duri found older texts, hidden texts, that told a different story. These books said humans did not die. They chose to leave. They flew beyond the edge of the galaxy and never came back. Why would anyone leave? Duri had wondered this for years. Now, watching the Drath eat the galaxy piece by piece, she thought maybe humans had seen something like this coming. Maybe they knew the coalition could not be saved. The next morning brought bad news. The Drath swarm had broken through the last defense line. They were coming for the capital world, home to 50 billion people. The coalition's leaders sent out emergency calls to every ship, every soldier, every ally. But everyone knew the truth. There were not enough ships. Not enough soldiers. Not enough hope. Admiral Yuna gathered her fleet around the capital. 200 warships. It was the largest force the coalition had ever assembled. It would not be enough. The Drath were coming with thousands of vessels, each one filled with creatures that felt no pain and knew no fear. "We will buy time," Yuna told her captains. "Every hour we hold, more civilians escape. Every minute matters." No one asked how long they would survive. No one wanted to know. On Sanctuary's Hope, Duri felt the ship shake. They were jumping to safety, far from the battle. She should have felt relief. Instead, she felt only sadness. The galaxy she knew was ending. The Drath would consume everything, and there was nothing anyone could do. Then the sensors screamed. Something was coming out of deep space. Not from any known direction. Not from any mapped star system. These ships were coming from the void between galaxies, from the empty darkness where nothing lived. Thousands of ships. Tens of thousands. They were shaped like arrows, sleek and silver, built for speed and war. They moved in perfect formation, like a single mind controlled them all. Every communication channel in the galaxy went silent. Then a voice spoke. It was calm and steady, speaking in a language that translation systems struggled with for a moment before catching up. This is Admiral Han Tayo of the Terran Reclamation Fleet. We picked up your distress calls. Looks like you have a pest problem. Duri dropped her book. Her hands were shaking. Terran. That was the old word. The ancient word. It meant human. On her bridge, Admiral Yuna stared at her screens. The new fleet was larger than anything she had ever seen, and they were moving toward the Drath with no hesitation, no fear. Who are they? Her officer whispered. "Yun," a thought of old stories her grandmother had told her. Tales of creatures who refused to die, who laughed at impossible odds, who burned themselves out in glorious defiance. She had always thought they were just myths. Legends, she said quietly. They are legends. The human fleet did not slow down. They hit the Drath formation like a hammer hitting glass. Explosions lit up the darkness. The monsters that had conquered 100 worlds suddenly found themselves facing something they had never encountered before. Duri watched the battle through her ship's long-range cameras. Human vessels danced between Drath ships, faster and more agile than anything she had seen. Their weapons cut through enemy armor like it was paper. The Drath swarm, for the first time in its existence, stopped advancing. The hive mind that controlled billions of creatures felt something new spreading through its consciousness. It had consumed countless species. It had never been challenged like this. The humans kept coming. Admiral Tayo stood on his bridge and watched the battle unfold. 10,000 years ago, his ancestors had fled into the darkness. They had been betrayed, hunted, nearly destroyed. They had every reason to let the galaxy burn, but they came back anyway. All ships, Tayo said, show them what humanity can do. The war for the galaxy had just begun. And for the first time in months, the Coalition had something they had forgotten how to feel. Hope. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the Drath had lost half their fleet. They retreated for the first time in living memory. The capital was saved, but the Coalition leaders did not celebrate. They argued. The Parak High Council, tall beings made of living crystal, demanded that humans be treated as invaders. They remembered the old stories differently. To them, humans were dangerous monsters who had once threatened to dominate the galaxy. Their disappearance had been a blessing. The Mori delegation disagreed. They saw the humans as saviors. Without them, everyone would be dead. Admiral Yuna listened to them fight and felt tired. While politicians argued, soldiers died. That was always the way. She was ordered to make first contact with the human fleet, to learn what they wanted, to discover if they were friends or something worse. The Terran flagship was called Unbroken Dawn. It was 3 times larger than any Coalition vessel. When Yuna's shuttle approached, she saw the ship's hull was covered in strange marks. Writing, she realized, names. Millions of names carved into the metal. The names of the dead, her pilot whispered. They carry their ancestors with them. Yuna felt something cold move through her heart. What had her people done to deserve such remembrance? Admiral Han Tayo met her in a simple meeting room. He was tall for a human, with gray hair and eyes that had seen too much death. His uniform was plain but clean. Behind him stood a woman with sharp features and a soldier's posture. Fleet Admiral Yuna, Tayo said. Thank you for coming. This is Commander Soyan, my second in command. Yuna studied them both. 10,000 years of separation, and humans still looked much the same as the old pictures. Soft skin, expressive faces. Small compared to most species. Easy to underestimate. Why did you come back? Yuna asked. She saw no point in small talk. Tayo smiled slightly. Because you needed help. The Coalition betrayed your people. We drove you into exile. Why would you help us? Soyan shifted beside her admiral, but said nothing. Tayo's smile faded. We remember what was done to us. he said. "We have not forgotten, but we also remember who we want to be. And we are not the kind of people who watch others die when we can help." Yuna did not know what to say. She had expected demands, conditions, revenge. This simple kindness confused her. "What do you want in return?" she asked. "Nothing yet. Let us win this war first. Then we can talk about the future." Far below, on a planet the Drath had nearly consumed, the first human ground forces landed. Private Jiwoo was 20 years old. He had trained his whole life for this moment, but nothing had prepared him for reality. The Drath on the ground were worse than the ones in space. They were twisted creatures, some as small as dogs, others as large as buildings. They swarmed over everything, eating, destroying, screaming in voices that hurt to hear. Jiwoo wore powered armor that made him 3 times stronger and twice as fast. His rifle fired plasma bolts that could cut through stone. But when the first wave of Drath came at him, he still felt fear. Then his training took over. He fired. He moved. He fired again. The monsters fell, and he kept moving. Around him, his squad did the same. They were a machine of death, precise and unstoppable. A cry for help came over the radio. Velen soldiers were trapped in a collapsed building. The Drath were closing in. "We have to help them," Jiwoo said. His sergeant looked at him. "That is not our mission. I do not care." Jiwoo ran toward the screaming. 2 members of his squad followed. They reached the building just as the Drath broke through the last barrier. Jiwoo jumped into the middle of them, his armor absorbing hits that would have killed an unprotected human. He fought like something from the old legends. His rifle ran empty, so he used his fists. His armor cracked, so he kept fighting anyway. When it was over, 12 Drath lay dead and 15 Velen soldiers stood alive. One of them, a young female with broken antenna, stared at him. "Why?" she asked. "Why would you save us? Our ancestors tried to destroy your people." Jiwoo pulled off his helmet. His face was young, covered in sweat and blood. He smiled. "You are not your ancestors," he said. "And neither am I." Word spread quickly. Humans were not here for revenge. They were here to fight, to save, to protect. Coalition soldiers who had expected monsters found allies instead. The fear began to change into something else. On the unbroken dawn, Commander Sai watched reports come in from across the front lines. Human casualties were rising. They were dying to save people who had once tried to kill them. "Do you think they understand?" she asked Taiho. "The Coalition. Do you think they understand what we are giving them?" Taiho stood at the window, watching stars burn in the distance. "Not yet," he said. "But they will." Deep in the darkness between stars, the Drath Hive Queen felt her children dying. She was ancient beyond measure, a mind that spanned billions of bodies. She had consumed entire civilizations. Nothing had ever stopped her. But these new creatures were different. They did not break. They did not run. They fought with a fire she had never seen before, for the first time in her long existence. The queen felt something cold spreading through her consciousness. It was fear. She did not like it. "Find out what they are," she commanded her swarm. "Find out how to kill them." The war was far from over. But now, both sides knew the truth. Everything had changed. The alliance grew stronger every day. Human ships fought beside coalition vessels. Human soldiers trained with alien warriors. For the first time in months, the Drath were being pushed back. But old wounds do not heal easily. Historian Dory had spent weeks requesting access to the Terran archives. She wanted to know the truth about the human exodus. Why had they really left? What had the Coalition done to them? Finally, Admiral Taiho granted her request. What she found made her sick. The records were complete, detailed, horrifying. 12,000 years ago, the founding species of the coalition had seen humanity as a threat. Humans advanced too quickly. They adapted too well. They would dominate the galaxy within centuries. So the coalition decided to stop them. They created a plague. They spread it to every human colony. Billions died screaming. Men, women, children. Entire worlds became graveyards. The few survivors fled into the darkness beyond the galaxy's edge, taking only their ships and their grief. Dury read testimonies from the last refugees. Mothers who watched their children die. Soldiers who found their families turned to corpses. Scientists who realized, too late, that the plague was engineered. She closed the files and wept. Admiral Una came to her the next day. Dory showed her the truth. Una read in silence, her blue eyes dimming with every word. My ancestors, Una said quietly. My own bloodline. They voted for this. What do we do now? Dory asked. Una stood up. Her body felt old and heavy. We do what should have been done long ago. She requested a meeting with Admiral Taiho. This time, she did not bring guards or advisors. She came alone. Admiral Taiho, she said, standing before him. On behalf of the Vellum people, on behalf of the coalition, I offer our formal apology for the genocide committed against humanity. There are no excuses. There is no forgiveness we deserve. I can only say that we were wrong. Terribly, unforgivably wrong. Taiho looked at her for a long moment. His face showed nothing. Thank you, he said finally. You were the first to say those words in 10,000 years. It should have been said long ago. Yes, it should have. The silence stretched between them. Then Taiho reached out and took her hand. We accept your apology, he said. Not because it erases what was done. It does not. But because holding on to hatred will not bring back our dead. It will only create more. Una felt tears forming in her eyes. She had not cried in decades. Not all humans found forgiveness so easy. Captain Junji led the Ghost Division, the most elite unit in the Terran military. She was 35 years old, tall and strong, with scars on her face from a dozen battles. Her great-grandmother had been one of the last refugees to escape the genocide. Junji had grown up hearing stories of what the coalition had done. She hated them. All of them. When she was assigned to protect a Parak civilian shelter, she almost refused. The Parak had been the loudest voices calling for human destruction. Their ancestors had designed the plague, but orders were orders. The shelter held 300 Parak civilians. Most were children. They were crystalline beings, beautiful in their own way, with bodies that caught light and turned it into rainbows. They looked at Junji's soldiers with terror in their faceted eyes. Monster, whispered one of the young ones. The humans are monsters. Junji heard the word and felt her hatred burn brighter. Then the Drath came. They burst from underground, dozens of twisted creatures seeking flesh. The shelter had no weapons, no defenses. Just children and their teachers screaming in fear. Junji did not think. She moved. Her ghost division cut through the Drath like lightning through clouds. Junji herself killed 14 of the creatures, her blade flashing so fast it blurred. When the last monster fell, she stood in the middle of the shelter, covered in alien blood. The children stared at her. The same child who had called her monster walked forward slowly. You saved us, the little one said. Why? Junji looked down at the crystalline face. She saw only a child, innocent, afraid, no different from the human children who had died screaming 12,000 years ago. Because you are not your ancestors, she said. The words felt strange in her mouth, but also right. And I will not become the monster they feared. The war continued. The Drath launched a massive attack that destroyed the coalition's second fleet. Among the dead was Admiral Yuna's daughter, a young captain who had died covering the retreat of civilian ships. Yuna received the news in silence. She did not cry. She did not scream. She simply stood at her window and watched the stars. Taiho found her there hours later. "How did your people survive it?" she asked without turning. "The grief. The loss. How did you not break?" Taiho stood beside her. "We almost did not," he admitted. "For the first 1,000 years, we wanted nothing but revenge. We built weapons that could crack planets. We trained armies that could conquer empires. We were ready to come back and burn everything. What stopped you? We realized that if we destroyed you, we would become exactly what you feared. We would prove them right. The best revenge was not destruction. It was proving them wrong about who we were." Yuna turned to face him. Her eyes were wet. "Your daughter," Taiho said gently. "She died saving others. That is a death with meaning. Hold on to that. It hurts. Yes, it always will. But pain shared is pain lessened. Let us share it." Outside, new reports arrived. Intelligence had discovered the location of the Drath Hive Queen. Her core whirled. Her heart. A plan began to form. An impossible mission, but humans had always specialized in the impossible. The assault on the Drath homeworld was the largest military operation in galactic history. Every species sent ships. Every world sent soldiers. For the first time ever, the entire coalition fought as one, and at the front of the attack flew the humans. Lieutenant Hyam led a mixed squadron of fighters through the orbital defenses. His wingmate was a Mori pilot named Bora, who had never worked with humans before. She had grown up hearing legends of their brutality and recklessness. The legends were true, but not in the way she expected. The Drath orbital platforms threw walls of fire at them. Ships exploded left and right. Bora saw 3 of her squad die in the first minute. "Stay close to me," Hyan's voice came through her radio. "Match my movements exactly." She followed him through impossible gaps in the enemy fire. He flew like he could see the future, always moving before the shots arrived. 2 Drath fighters locked onto her tail. She was dead. Then Hyam was there, his ship spinning between hers and the enemy. He destroyed both Drath with precise shots. "I told you to stay close," he said. She could hear him smiling. "You are insane," she answered. "All the best pilots are." They broke through the orbital defense together, on the ground. Commander Shoyan led the primary strike team into the heart of the Drath fortress. 500 soldiers from 6 different species, united in one purpose: kill the queen. The fortress was a nightmare made real. Walls of flesh and bone. Corridors that shifted and moved. The air itself seemed to fight them, thick with spores that burned the lungs. The Drath came in endless waves. They poured from the walls, the floors, the ceiling. Soldiers fell by the dozen, by the 100. But the strike team kept moving forward. Sergeant Jiwoo found himself carrying a wounded Parak soldier named Varn. The crystalline warrior had taken a hit that shattered half his body. He was dying. "Leave me," Varn said. "I am slowing you down." "No," Jiwoo said simply. "Why?" "I am not your people. We are nothing to you." Jiwoo kept walking, his powered armor straining under the extra weight. "You are wrong," he said. "You are people. That is enough." He carried Varn 3 kilometers through enemy territory. When they reached the medical station, the Parak soldier was still alive. Barely. "I will remember this," Varn whispered. "My children will remember." "Good. Tell them humans are not so bad." Captain Yunji and her ghost division reached the Queen's chamber first. They had lost half their numbers getting there. The survivors were exhausted, wounded, running low on ammunition. The chamber was vast, a cathedral of organic horror. And in the center sat the Hive Queen herself, She was enormous. A mass of flesh and tendrils and glowing eyes that filled half the room. She looked at the humans with something like curiosity. "Interesting," the queen said, speaking through a dozen captured bodies at once. "You are the ones who do not break. I have been watching you." "Then you know what is coming," Yunji said, raising her weapon. "You cannot kill me. I am the swarm. We are infinite. Cut off one head, and 1,000 grow in its place. We will see about that." The Ghost Division attacked. The Queen's defenders rose to meet them. The chamber became a storm of blood and fire. Outside, Admiral Taiho watched the battle from his flagship. The psychic amplifier, the organ that connected the Queen to her entire swarm, was deep inside the fortress, protected by shields that his weapons could not penetrate from space. Someone had to disable those shields from inside. "Admiral," came Soyin's voice over the radio. "I have reached the shield generator, but there is a problem. Report. The only way to destroy it is from inside. There is no way out." Taiho closed his eyes. He had known this moment might come. He had prayed it would not. "Soyin, find another way." "There is no other way. You know that. I order you to find one." Silence on the radio. Then her voice, softer now. "Taiho, it has been an honor serving with you. Tell the galaxy we came back. Tell them we forgave. Tell them we won." "Soyin, wait!" Her ship launched from the hangar. It was small and fast, slipping through the draft defenses. Taiho watched it dive into the fortress, watched it disappear into the depths. "I am sorry, old friend," her final transmission said. "Take care of them for me." The explosion was visible from space. The shields fell. "All ships," Taiho said, his voice steady despite the tears on his face. "Concentrate fire on the psychic amplifier. Everything you have, now." The combined fleet opened fire. Thousands of weapons struck as one. The fortress screamed as the amplifier ruptured. Across the galaxy, every draft suddenly stopped. The connection was severed. The hive mind shattered into 1 billion fragments. Without the Queen to guide them, the creatures collapsed into chaos. In her chamber, the Queen screamed as her power died. Yunji stood before her, blade raised. "You were wrong about us," the captain said. "We are not infinite like you. We live short lives. We die easy. But while we live, we burn brighter than any star. And we never, ever give up." Her blade fell. The war was over. The silence after war is strange. After months of explosions and screaming, the quiet felt almost painful. Across the galaxy, draft bodies lay still. Without the hive mind, they were nothing but empty shells. Worlds that had been consumed began to heal. People who had hidden in fear emerged into sunlight. It was over. Truly over. Commander Soyin was found in the wreckage 3 days later. Search teams had given up hope, but a young human soldier named Jiwoo refused to stop looking. He dug through rubble for 72 hours without sleep until he found her escape pod. Damaged but intact, she was barely alive. Her body was broken, burned, shattered in 12 places. The doctor said she would never walk again. They did not know humans very well. Admiral Yuna personally oversaw her recovery. The Vellum leader sat beside Soin's bed for hours, watching machines keep the human alive. "Why are you here?" Soin asked when she finally woke. Her voice was weak but steady. "Because you saved us all," Yuna said. "Because I owe you a debt that can never be repaid." "You owe me nothing. I did what any soldier would do." "No, you did what a hero would do. There is a difference." Soin smiled faintly. "I am no hero, just stubborn. That is the same thing, I think." The memorial service was held on the Coalition capital world. Representatives from every species gathered to honor the fallen. Human, Velen, Mori, Parik, and 100 others stood together under the same sky. Admiral Taiho stood before them. He looked older than he had at the war's beginning. The weight of loss had carved lines into his face. But his voice was strong. 10,000 years ago, he said, my ancestors were driven into the darkness. We were betrayed by those we called friends. We were hunted like animals. We lost billions of our people to hatred and fear. The crowd was silent. Many could not meet his eyes. We could have stayed in exile, Taiho continued. We could have let the galaxy burn. Many of my people wanted exactly that. They said you deserved your fate. They said we owed you nothing. He paused, looking out at the sea of faces. But that is not who we chose to be. Humanity is not defined by what was done to us. We are defined by what we do. We choose kindness over cruelty. We choose forgiveness over revenge. We choose to help, even when it costs us everything. He raised his hand toward the sky, where human ships still patrolled beside coalition vessels. Today we stand together, not as former enemies, but as allies, as friends. The past cannot be erased. The dead cannot return. But we can honor them by building something better. A galaxy where no one faces the darkness alone. The crowd erupted in applause. Humans and aliens embraced. Soldiers who had fought side by side wept on each other's shoulders. Historian Duri watched from the front row, tears streaming down her blue face. She had spent years studying the human exodus. Now she would write a new chapter. The Human Return. Her book would become the most read work in galactic history. It told the truth, all of it. The genocide, the exile, the long years of rage and grief, and finally, the choice to forgive. They had every reason to destroy us, she wrote, but they chose to save us instead. That is what makes them human. Lieutenant Jiwoo received the Coalition's highest medal for valor. He stood on stage in his dress uniform, looking uncomfortable with all the attention. Reporters surrounded him afterward. What drives humans to sacrifice so much for strangers? One asked. Jiwoo thought about the question. He thought about Soyeon diving into fire, about Yoonji protecting children who called her monster, about 10,000 years of exile that ended not in revenge, but in rescue. Someone told us we were monsters, he said finally. We spent 10,000 years proving them wrong. That is all. That is everything. The unbroken dawn prepared to depart for Earth. The human homeworld had been empty for millennia, kept preserved by automated systems. Now it was time to return. Time to rebuild. Captain Yoonji stood on the observation deck, watching stars drift past. Beside her stood Bora, the Mori pilot who had become her closest friend during the war. Do you think it will last? Bora asked. The peace? Yoonji considered the question. A year ago, she would have laughed. Peace with the people who murdered her ancestors? Impossible, but she had changed. They all had. No, she said honestly. Peace never lasts forever. Someone will always find a reason to fight. Old hatreds will resurface. New conflicts will arise. Bora's face fell. Then what was it all for? Yoonji turned to her friend and smiled. It was a real smile, warm and full of hope. It means we will have another chance to prove who we really are. Not once, but over and over. Every generation. Every conflict. Every time someone chooses mercy over murder, kindness over cruelty, love over hate. That is what being human means. We keep choosing. We keep trying. We never stop. She looked back at the stars. Somewhere out there, Earth waited. The war is over, Yoonji said. But our story is just beginning. On 100 worlds, the Coalition's new flag rose for the first time. It showed a circle of stars surrounding a small blue planet, a symbol of unity, A promise of better days. And at the center of it all, standing among the species they had saved, humanity had finally come home. Not as conquerors, not as monsters, but as exactly what they had always been. Human.